Thompson, Adams County Board of Supervisor, and Lee Hogan, Adams County Board of Supervisor, and Dale Curtis, Adams County Board of Supervisor, will give us some information on the ballot issue for the new Justice Center for Adams County. Go Scott.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'm going to try to cover a lot of information for you. If you'll let me get through that information, we'll allow plenty of time for the questions that you'll have when we're all done. Just quickly and briefly, we're out here at Wallace School. This is something that the Adams County Board of Supervisors used your tax dollars to help purchase this. We now house the county extension office out here. We were paying approximately $25,000 a year in rent to house them. The county has numerous space issues, so the purchase of this building helped save that much money and gave them a nice place to be. We're in the gymnasium out here. It gives us a chance. If there wasn't COVID, we could have a lot of people out here, but we use it to hold a lot of big meetings such as that. And real quickly behind this building is the rural fire department is building a building out here to house their trucks. They were paying $60,000 a year to the city to house 3 fire trucks. Supervisor Hogan and I have been working on this for a couple years now to find them a place to have their own building. Not only is it going to save them that much money and hopefully keep their tax asking down, which only would help decrease taxes, but it gives them, they can upgrade their equipment, they have a better response time being out here, and they can also do a lot of training out here. So just a couple quick little tidbits there. So now why we're here, the Adams County Board of Supervisors has elected to place on the November ballot the option for the voters to decide on a justice center at a price not to exceed $38 million. Our jail was built back in the early 60s. I think it was 1962 to be exact. Our jail is what is called a non-compliant jail. It does not meet jail standards and it doesn't pass the state regulations. The only way that we're allowed to stay open is the state has allowed us to be grandfathered in. How long that will continue, we have no idea, but we have been a non-compliant jail for an awful long time. Today, at present, our jail is basically crumbling above us. It's on the 3rd floor of the courthouse, and it's pretty much reached its life expectancy. We are spending an awful lot of money on maintenance just to keep it running. We have numerous plumbing issues up there. We've actually had, right below the jail is district court. We've actually had to close down district court before because water has started leaking through the ceiling down on top of Judge Ellingsworth and on his desk. I have some videos on my phone. I probably should have had Elaine put it on the computer of pipes in a crawl space under there that when toilets are flushed, when showers are running, that water just bubbles right out of pipes. This has happened for a long time. We just spend countless dollars fixing that. We have upgraded some of the electrical, but it's in very, very bad shape too. And a lot of this drain is just on the mechanical system for the courthouse. It's overloaded as it is. They can't get parts for locks up there anymore. They have 1 key left for the locks on the cell doors. That's all they are, and they cannot get parts for those locks or cell doors anymore at all. So they've just been manufacturing ways to keep things working. There's a lot of safety issues up there, not only for our jailers. There's too many prisoners in a cell. That's one of the reasons why it doesn't meet the regulations or jail standards. So if jailers have to go into a cell, there's too many inmates in there and they don't have a great line of sight to see what actually is going on in there. It's also a liability issue for the inmates, having that many inmates in a cell. We've all heard of mental health issues out there and how the jails are getting a lot of mental health people that would have been out in the regional center a long time ago. When you start mixing some of these inmates with other inmates that have mental health issues, we have a lot of problems, and you end up with fights in cells. And it's some of those inmates don't put up with some of those people with mental health issues. So we're at that point to where we even have bare extension cords running just to keep things going up there. We're at a point to where sooner or later there could be a severe liability issue, not only with our jailers or with the prisoner. And it's not uncommon for an inmate to file some sort of a court claim against the county, so none of them held up. But it's getting bad up there. We would have loved to have taken all those prisoners out of there and walked every one of you through there, but it's economically not feasible to do. We can't even take a video of everything up there because prisoners have rights also, but it's in very, very bad shape. So currently we have a capacity of about 40 inmates up there. We can pretty much safely hold 37 up there. On any given day, we are housing that many prisoners elsewhere. For example, Hall County takes Grand Island, their correction center. They have a lot of our inmates up there. Buffalo County and Kearney. We've even housed prisoners in Clay Center and in Holdridge and other places. With the cost of the housing the prisoners, the transportation, and the salary that we have for all the transport officers, 2 years ago, we spent $1.65 million just in 1 year on housing prisoners elsewhere. That's just an astronomical figure. When I first got on the board 10 years ago, every supervisor, for every penny of your tax dollars that gets spent, a supervisor has to sign a claim for that. When I first started, some of the claims that I had to sign were for the jail. I was just astounded at the cost 10 years ago that we were spending to house prisoners elsewhere. After I'd been on the board 2 or 3 years, I brought up to the board that we need to look into something, maybe getting a new jail because of the shape that it was in and all the money that we were spending. Back then, we had an awfully conservative board, and there was no track. I think Dale Curtis stood behind me on that, but we were the only ones that recognized the need. The others were just too afraid of what it would cost, or maybe what the taxpayers would say if they were to bring something like that up. But since then, the board has changed a bit. You know, some have retired, some have gotten voted out. Supervisor Hogan now on the board, he took over paying those same claims that I was paying when he got on the board. One of the first things, he hadn't been there probably a month or two, and he goes, "Thompson, have you looked to see how much we're paying to house all these prisoners elsewhere?" He was just flabbergasted by the amount of money that we were spending also. So finally, I made a motion to the board to see if they would allow us to at least do a study, to hire a company to do a study, to find out where we're at, how much it would cost. They agreed to that. We spent $15. It was a company called Prohaska and Associates out of Omaha. They specialize in this. That's what they do. We spent an awful lot of time with them on this needs study. They projected that within 20 years from now, we would need approximately 180 beds. So if we have approximately 75 to 80 prisoners a day, that's more than double in 20 years of what we need today. It didn't make a whole lot of sense even to me because Adams County population doesn't really grow that much, but inmate population does. And they did studies statewide, countywide, nationwide, everywhere. There's just more and more crime all the time, and inmate population is increasing. In 30 years, they projected we would need over 200 beds. So in that study, we came up with several designs. We had a location picked. That location was just north of the courthouse. We have a building there called, it's the Annex. It's a very, very old building. And it too, its life expectancy is right today. In that building, we house the Register of Deeds on the first floor. We house planning and zoning is on the first floor. And in the basement, we house the public defender. I've been the chairman of the Building and Grounds Committee for 10 years. And another issue that when I started was we were paying rent for the public defender, and it was outrageous, the rent that we were paying down at the Strand building. So what we did was spent a little tiny bit of money and fixed up the basement in the annex, and now we house the public defender down there. They don't call it the basement, they kind of call it the dungeon. It's a nice place and they get by, and it saved us an awful lot of money. But we do have some old issues that creep up down there, and we've spent a lot of money on maintenance on that building also. So we figured that was maybe a very, very good place to do it. We could keep the courts where they were at, or we could keep the attorneys where they're at. In the courthouse, that would help save a lot of money. But unfortunately, there was some negative feedback. Mayor Studi gave me a call. Supervisor Hogan and Supervisor Curtis and I met with him, and they weren't happy with that location. They said they had heard a lot of grumbling from business owners downtown that it doesn't make any sense to put a jail in downtown. I'm not quite so sure that they didn't realize that for 60 years there's been a jail downtown, but they said that. And we would have to get a building permit to do that. And from what we gathered from them, we would never get a building permit to do that, although that was an ideal location. And also, we found out that Catholic schools were thinking of expanding their campus, and they weren't too happy that maybe there would be a big jail that close to their campus. So, you know, if nothing else, we were trying to be good neighbors also, so we began looking elsewhere. Judy Minger, who is head of planning and zoning, we started looking at a number of different places. She found this at Highway 281 and M Street, which is just probably a couple blocks to the south of Highway 6 and 281. And it was owned by a company called Butler Manufacturing. They're right across the road from Case IH, from Woodward's Disposal. It's on the east side of the highway, and they had 11 acres out there. They were thinking of building at one time, but they decided to build elsewhere, I guess. Hastings just wasn't a progressive enough community. So they were sitting there with 11 acres. So I got a hold of them. We had some dealings that went back and forth for quite some time. We ended up making a deal on that property. We acquired 11 acres for $180,000. The nice thing about that is all the utilities are already out there. It also would give us a place to expand if we ever did in the future need to expand. So we already have the property. We believe that's an ideal location to put it. Nobody's complained about it as of yet. So that's where we are with that. So in essence, what we've been doing is we've been sending all our tax dollars, that's every one of your tax dollars, my tax dollars, to all these other counties because we have a deteriorating jail. I figure just in the time that I've been on the board for 10 years, I would bet that we have given away over $10 million tax dollars, which raises the levy every single year. And it's growing every single year. And that's just since I've been on the board. I think today it's time that we need to do something about that. Those dollars really need to stay in our county. If they did, if we had a justice center out there, maybe we could create a few more jobs, a few more middle-class jobs, which is what this county desperately needs. We don't have enough. Anytime you get a restaurant or a clothing store that come to Hastings and are thinking about it, the reason they don't come is because they say there's not enough middle-class paying jobs. Now, we're not going to create a ton of jobs by doing this, but you got to start somewhere, and we need to keep those tax dollars. Basically, for many, many, many years, and for every year now, we are making payments on a new jail but we don't get the jail. That's just the way that it is. Today, interest rates are at record lows. It's just the right time to do it. We need to stop spending that much money every year. So why not build just the jail? Why do we need an entire justice center? Safety is probably the biggest thing. At present, in order for us to get inmates to go to the courtrooms, we have to walk them through the courthouse, and they are right next to the public. Not a very good situation at all. Where I sit in our boardroom, when we have meetings, I can see mothers with children out there. We can have packed days up there in the courtrooms, and it's just not a good idea to be mixing prisoners with the public. We also, when you have to transport prisoners, we'll either use, depending upon the prisoner, 1 or 2 transport officers will have to take them to wherever we're housing them at. That's not a safety, or that is a safety issue too. I know Iowa and Kansas in the past 2 years have had a transport officer or a deputy that has had a prisoner get away, get their gun, and it has killed them. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. If you can cut those odds down, that's what we want to do here in Adams County and Middle America. Hopefully we have a little bit more respect for law enforcement than what we're seeing in some of the bigger cities today. And we don't need to wait for something to happen when we can do something. All these meetings with Adams, when we have meetings with county officials from all across the state, I take a chance and I'll visit with their lawyers and liability issues. They'll tell me that if you see there's an issue and don't do anything about it, they can't defend it. But if you've taken precautions and you do something about it, at least they can defend something like that. So we're also out of space in our courthouse. No matter how hard you try to keep government from growing, it grows. And part of that reason, the biggest part of the reason, is crime. Donna Fegler, who's our county attorney, she needs 2 more attorneys. She doesn't even have space for the one she has right now. Public defenders, they need to hire another attorney, and they don't have enough space where they're at right now. I've got the assessor's office. I have them split in 2 different offices because their office isn't big enough to house everybody. It just isn't an efficient way for them to conduct business. As a supervisor and the chairman of the building and grounds, I think it's my job to make sure that every department has what they need in order to conduct their office and their business as efficiently as they can. And that goes for the jail too. The other big issue that we have with space is storage. We are required to keep records, some for a lifetime, some for 50 years, 20 years, 10 years. The annex building I was talking about upstairs, we store a lot of records. And I had my maintenance get an idea of how much weight we have on the 3rd floor up there. So he started weighing some boxes, counted all the boxes. We have over 25 ton of records just on the 3rd floor of the annex. The floor's starting to sag a little bit too. It's going to be a safety issue pretty long. I've even built storage spaces down in a building that we also acquired south part of town to do nothing but house records. We have a number of rooms in the basement of the courthouse that do nothing but store records. We're just running out of room. We're starting to microfilm some, but that's an expensive issue to do also. So again, that's a very old building. It's not very good shape. We have to get those people out of there sooner or later. So kind of what we came up with a true justice center is our plan is, and what we did was we used Prohaska and Associates, but we formed a citizens committee. And there's, I think, 26 people on that citizens committee. And I called each and every one of those people to ask them if they would donate their time to help us. I see Lyle Fleeharty's on this. He's the chairman of that citizens committee. Elaine's on that. There's a number of different people, farmers, people that work at the hospital, retired people from all different walks. They helped us come up with an idea, with a plan on what to do. And we weren't even going to present anything to the board unless we had a unanimous consent on our citizens committee. And when we came up with this plan, everybody on that citizens committee thought that it was a good idea. So what that idea was we were going to build a facility that would have 164 jail beds. It would house the county attorney, the public defender, the county judges, the district court judges, 4 courtrooms and jury rooms, and the clerk of the district court. It's just a requirement that the clerk of the district court has to be in the same space that the district judges are. So one thing that would do, it would eliminate transporting prisoners. So that safety issue I was talking about, that would be eliminated. We've looked at a number of new facilities too, such as Seward County, Hall County Correction Center, Buffalo County. Is that Eddie Lane? We've looked at, there's one other, I can't think of it right offhand. And well, Lincoln County, I didn't get to Lincoln County yet. We were headed up there and then the COVID issue hit and they weren't allowing anybody to come into their jails. But in some of these new facilities, for example, Buffalo County, you can be in a cell, you can go through 2 locked doors, pass through a narrow hallway, and you're right in the courtroom. In Seward County, for example, you can take a prisoner out of a cell in the jail, put them in an elevator, which goes to only 1 floor, and that's the courtroom, and the deputies are standing right there waiting for them. So there's no safety issues at all with something like that. When you start comparing these newer facilities to ours, it's like we're living in the dark ages. So it frees up that much more space. If we don't free up some space in the courthouse, we will start having to spend more of your tax dollars just for rent for the county attorney or the public defender or the assessor's office. And to me, spending tax dollars on rent makes no sense at all. So I'm kind of going through this pretty quick because I know there's a time limit and I look up at the clock and that's, I'm getting close. So you are available to move some of those pictures. We're going to show you some pictures. I'm going to give you a brief cost. I mean, everybody, what they really want to know is what's this going to cost. I've kind of talked to you about what we're doing, why we need it, the situation that we're in. So now we're going to look at the cost. And these are going to come up on their screens, is that correct?
We're going to hope it does. I'm not an expert at this, but we're sure going to try and see if we can get it to work.
Elaine, I made you a co-host, so it should work.
Where do I go to get it to turn?
Should be a circle up top. Now go under.
Oh, here we go.
All right, this first slide that's on your screen, we'll just go through that quickly. It's kind of, if we were to continue where we're at, like we're doing today, housing prisoners elsewhere, in 20 years, we would end up spending $81,277,000.
Scott, I don't have that image.
Yeah, Chris, it says I'm sharing, but it's not coming up.
Did you double click it, Elaine? The image?
Yeah, I've got the image up. It says that you are screen sharing, but nothing is,
Try double clicking on the image.
okay. It's, yeah, I tried that. That's
fine.
not working.
I can just give you the numbers.
It's coming up on my phone. Maybe I should just I'll stop my phone. I'll leave the meeting on my phone and then we'll see if I can't get it to.
We will email. We can always email.
Yeah,
these.
I've got these. I can email them to all of you ladies.
Okay, so where we're at now.
And
is-
gentlemen,
Like we said earlier, on the November ballot, it's going to be the bond issue for a justice center for $38 million. If we were to continue as is, like I said, it's over $80 million. If our jail gets closed, if the state decides to close us down within 20 years, if we had to go that route, we would end up spending $119 million just on housing prisoners elsewhere. We just can't, there's no way that we can afford to do something like that. So the potential bond issue, at $38 million, what we would do is we would do a bond, and that would be for 20 years. Today, current interest rates are right around 2.35%. So we would have an estimated annual payment of approximately $2.3 million. And that would require a bond levy of 5.95 cents per $100 of valuation. Now, before you get too carried away thinking 5.9 cents per $100, that's quite a bit of money. And yeah, it is. But that's what would be required to repay this bond. But if you look at what we're spending today at $1.65 million, if you just take $1.5 million of that, that would decrease the levy 4 cents. So if the county doesn't get carried away and spend that money on something else, and I'm also allowing $150,000 difference right there too, plus that 1.65 million is going to increase every year. The 1.5 million in savings drops at 4 cents. So you're probably looking at less than 2 cents per $100 of valuation.
Chris, when you made me as a host, you made my telephone as a host. I was listening on my telephone. Can you make just my screen with Scott in it as a host?
Let me see what I can do.
Because it came up on my phone,
Okay,
but I turned my phone off.
well, the one that says Elaine, that must have been your phone?
No, just try the one that says Elaine and not Elaine's iPhone.
Okay, the one that I made a co-host was Elaine, but we'll try this again. Otherwise, you could email me those documents and I can try to put them up.
Okay. All right.
Try that. I just made you a co-host. See if that works.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Yeah, it's for some reason it's not going on my computer. It went on my phone. Okay, we'll
Okay.
just let Scott continue here.
Sorry.
That's fine. I just thought we'd try one more thing.
So going back to that 5.95 cents, we had the assessor come up with the average price of a home in Adams County. And that average price of a home is $123,000. What that would do to the taxpayer that owned a home at that price, it would increase their valuation $73. That comes to about $6 a month, comes to about 20 cents a day. But if you think about not having that $1.65 million in our budget, that's going to drop that by 2/3. So it would be nowhere near the cost. And hopefully for most people, $73 to save that much money isn't a horrific amount. The way our tax system is set up, it's probably not the fairest in the world, and the people that are going to get hit the hardest, and it's very unfortunate, we live in an agriculture community, is the farmers. They own a lot more property than the average person in town that owns a house. So they're going to get harder. So for a bond at $38 million per acre, we came up with costs so they would know. All we're doing is giving information so people can make a decision when they go to vote. So on a per acre of irrigated land, that would be over $3. It would be $3.27. $1.76 on non-irrigated land. On grassland, it would be 86 cents. So for a quarter section of irrigated land would be a little over $500. But once again, when you drop that 2/3, you're looking at just a little over $1 for irrigated land. So it does help bring it down quite a bit. So if for some reason, and I'm really hoping that the people, because we've been out and about passing or giving this information out, we've held a number of meetings out here for the public. I visited with the Sertoma Club. I've done radio, TV, newspaper. We've been to Roseland. We've been to Kennesaw. So I'm hoping that enough people will realize what's going on and realize that it's time to do something. But if for some reason it doesn't happen and it gets voted down, there's an alternative, and that's what's called a nickel tax. And that's something that the Adams County Board of Supervisors can pass themselves without a vote from the public. But we're limited on the funds that we could get if we were to enact a nickel tax. And the maximum amount of money that we could get via a nickel tax would be $25,800,000. A new jail would cost, it was projected to cost $25 million. So I'm very confident, and if it doesn't happen, I will make that motion for the Adams County Board of Supervisors to do exactly that, and I'm very sure that that will pass. At the very, very least, we need a new jail horrifically bad. So numbers on that. We wouldn't get quite the interest rate, but it'd still be a 20-year bond. It would be 2.45%, which is very, very low. So the annual estimated payment on that, and I'm not making any of this up, but estimated annual payment on that would be $1.65 million. Why does that figure ring a bell? That's exactly what we spent 2 years ago housing prisoners elsewhere. So in essence, this could almost be a levy neutral type of a situation. The money that we're spending to house prisoners, we could be spending to have our own jail. Now, if we had a 164-bed jail, another way to help pay that off is we can house prisoners from other counties. Dick Shaw is a supervisor in Kennesaw. He told me that, or Kennesaw, Clay Center. He said they would most certainly send us prisoners. I know Lee Hogan has visited with Webster County. Their jail is one of the oldest in the state. They would probably shut that down and send us their prisoners. All the counties to the east and west and the south of us all have really old jails. In visiting with jail standards, they told us you could have as many prisoners as you wanted to. If we were to, just within 5 years, go to 80% capacity of 164 beds, Prohaska estimated that we could pay off the Justice Center in 11 years, just by housing prisoners from other counties. Now, you don't have to hire anywhere near as many staff per capita as we have today, because with these new facilities, you have control centers. You can see every single person, every single bed, just by sitting in a chair. You don't, upstairs in our jail, you have to walk down hallways, walkways, just to look at prisoners. So we wouldn't have to hire that many more people. About $75 a day for prisoners, if we just got to 80% capacity that also within a year comes to almost $1 million. So that's one way that this could get paid off even faster. And even at that $38 million bond, that could almost bring it down to a levy neutral type of an issue. But in order, just so people know, on that average $123,000 home, just on the $25.8 million bond, that would reduce that to $53 per house. So a little $4.50 a month, 15 cents a day. So that does bring that down a little bit. But once again, if we're not spending that 1.65 million, that brings all these figures down to nothing. It also brings the agriculture land down to $2.36 as compared to $3.27. So that drops that substantially. My last little piece of information is budgets. Last year, the budget for our jail was over $2.5 million for our jail. That's at 37 beds. Lincoln County in North Platte has a facility with 168 beds. Their budget is less than $2.5 million. So we're spending over $2.5 million for 37 prisoners and housing elsewhere, and Lincoln County has 168 beds and are spending less than we are. This doesn't make any sense at all. So I've tried to cover a lot of information. I know I didn't answer all of your questions, so let's take a little bit of time and I'll see what I can do to answer some questions. I wasn't that thorough, come on.
Scott, I've got one for you. Through all of the public meetings you've had, and I know you've really made an emphasis lately to go into the smaller communities where there are more ag land owners, are you hearing the response change at all or much? I mean, are you thinking you're getting more traction with those ag land owners?
Well, the only concerns actually that we've had have came from ag land owners, and we had them when we had the meetings out here at Wallace. Not very many, just one or two, but they are concerns. I think they all realize, and they have even said that they realize that we need to do something. But in their minds, they have been having an unfair share of burden on the ag folks, and that's very, very true. I wish there was a fairer way to tax this, but that's the system that we have. If anybody wants to change that, you got to start with the state legislature. So once we explain and they actually can see the dollars and cents, then they have a lot better understanding and aren't quite as concerned. I guess that's a fair way to put it. So one other thing that has came up, and I know Senator Halloran and Mayor Stute have put this out there before about not supporting this that much, and it should have been out at the regional center. That's just not right. If you go back a ways when Les Seiler was state senator, that's back in the days when recidivism was the big word of the day, and he was going to open up a building out there. It's Building 7, where it used to be the alcoholics building, and he was going to renovate that and bring inmates from the penitentiary and let them spend 6 months there and prepare them for release. So what he did, which he told me he was going to do that, I told him, oh my God, there's no way you could rehab those buildings for less than it would cost to build brand new. Well, sure you can. So he even went and hired an outfit out of New York, of all places, to do a study on that. And when that study came back, they said you would be by far better building a new building because it would cost more to rehab those buildings than it would to cost a brand new building. Senator Halloran, we talked about this, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, when I requested his office to look into it. He's still spouting that out there, but has never ever gotten back to me at my request to, well, what can we do to get the state to allow us to do that out there? Never have heard anything back again. So neither one of them have came to me, and I've kind of headed up this to ask for a sit down to talk about anything. So it just seems like there's too much of that anymore, where people are just speaking up when they don't have the facts. I'm not going in for the reasons why anybody does that, but we see it in government all the time, and especially on the big states today. And to me, it's just not right, especially in a community like ours. And I'm not out here telling anybody what they need to do. As far as voting goes, I'm just giving you the information, sharing with you the dollars, the costs, and letting you decide what you think. So when you go to vote, you can at least say, well, I have the information to make a decision.
I hope you guys can see the screens that Chris is sharing, especially this one that she has up right now. This is explaining if you have like a $123,000, $526 house, that's the average house cost, you are going to pay $73.49 annually. So this is for people who have a home, what you would be paying for the bond issue a year, $73.49. And of course, we do have another picture that will be coming up here as to what the ag land does cost. So hopefully you've been able to read some of these as, okay, here comes the agricultural land one. Hopefully you've been able to read these. I should have sent these to Chris ahead of time. I didn't realize I couldn't just share my screen.
So when the farmers do visit, and I try to explain to them, but they don't always hear what I have to say. But I do understand the burden that's going to be placed on them. I used to farm myself when I was much younger. But I also understand that there could be a burden placed not only on them, but you know, personally, I know some single mothers who $5 a year is just a big a deal to them as it is $5,000 to somebody else. So I'm a taxpayer also. I flip houses. So at any given time, I might own 3 or 4 houses. I pay taxes too. So, I mean, it'll be a hit on me. But in my mind, this is the biggest issue facing the county today. And even though it may be a burden on some people, I still think I'm doing them a favor by trying to get this passed. Because if we don't get it done, they are going to yell and scream when they see what's going to happen to their tax liability. Then it would just be horrific.
Chris, is there any way you can get picture number 10 up? If you put picture number 10 up, that shows the budgets of surrounding counties that have a, are similar to ours, and it shows how much more we are paying than them. If there's any way you can get picture number 10 up.
Well, go ahead. While they're trying that, this is Belva. Scott at the Board of Supervisors. I picked up this question. Would you compare, contrast, let's say, whether it's a city police or sheriff's deputy picking up a prisoner, arresting somebody, I'll say, and what happens from that point and how that affects city, county budgets, et cetera?
Well, if somebody gets picked up in the city of Hastings, well, maybe I shouldn't say this, but the city gets them to us just as fast as they can, because the minute they get them to us, it becomes a county liability. If something were to happen to them, if they had a seizure or bleeding, or they had to take them to the hospital, then that's on their bill. So they're brought to us just as quickly as they can. Now, another thing about, since you brought that up, as far as cost goes, if we have a much larger jail, every prisoner in the world, you can imagine what they're thinking about all day long is, how do I get out of here? So in our jail today, or any given day, oh, I think I'm having a heart attack, or they're faking a seizure, or I think I have COVID or something like that. But we would actually have a nurse's station up there in that facility who can make those decisions whether they need to go to the hospital or not. Right now, we just take them up there because if we don't, the liability issues would be ridiculous if something did happen. And that is a huge expense. So there's a number of different ways to help keep those costs down that we're today that aren't even included in that $1.65 million. I'm running out of time, but I mean, I could sit here and talk for an hour about all the costs that are associated with it that we could save.
Scott, this is Phyllis Salyards. I would think that the county's liability insurance for the jail would go down considerably with a new facility, and there would be savings in that realm, even with more customers, so to speak. Because you could make the whole thing much safer. And also the liability or the coverage for the employees, because they would be at less risk for injury and so forth.
That's very true. And NERMA is who we go through our insurance with. And we've already, I don't have that figure with me, and I've got so many figures inside this small brain of mine, I can't remember what it is. But we do not actually, a brand new facility such as that, we definitely have to pay insurance on that. But it's probably 100 times less than what anybody would think. So yes, again, not only would we have those savings, but it doesn't cost that much because this is every county in the state goes through NERMA with insurance, and that helps keep all those costs down.
Scott,
Dale.
could I expand a little bit on the public officials and part of the public who have had ideas that they think are better than ours, especially when it comes to moving out to the old Ingleside building. The thing that most voters don't realize that in order to build this jail, not only do we have to build a certain number of beds, but it has to be built a certain way, or the jail standards will not give us a occupancy permit to operate that jail. And the study that we had done, because our citizens committee was very thorough in making us get all the figures that we needed so that they could put them together so they could show the public whether we were telling them the truth or not. And to remodel the existing jail was $81 million. Now, $20 million of that was to relocate the prisoners for that two-year period of remodeling. So that leaves $60 million to remodel that jail. And that little jail needs to be expanded by almost 5 times in order to have enough capacity to get clearance from the jail standards. So if you took $60 million times 5, that's $300 million to go out there and renovate to try and get those old buildings up to a point to where they could be used as a jail. And it still wouldn't be efficient because you need a whole new design of how jails are built so that less people can have more eyes on all of the prisoners. Plus the fact, the way they're built now, we could house women and men side by side and they never ever see each other. So that women's rights are respected and so are men. It's just something that we have, you know, we've been through all this, and I know I'm kind of getting tired of explaining it, but I've lived here all my life. And the thing is, I think that if I didn't tell the public how bad we needed this and what all the facts are, that I'm not a very good citizen. And I just have to say we need a new jail, but we do need a new justice center, because I don't want to spend any major money on that courthouse. Once you start, there's no end to the cost. Thank you.
Jail Standards also said that if we were to remodel our old jail, to meet jail standards, we would have 4 less beds. And I also went to Representative Adrian Smith's office, and I went to Helleran's office to see if we could get any state or federal money to help us with this. It took about 5 or 10 minutes before they started laughing at us, but there's nothing out there. The only way we can finance this is through tax dollars. So we've tried to exhaust every avenue. This is a couple years now that we've been working on this. We've had some of the smartest people in Hastings help us with this. So this is what we came up with.
Scott, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Something that hasn't been mentioned a lot is part of the budget is we have a full-time person doing nothing but doing meals. The savings to us of having a nurse practitioner, a dentist on contract to come out to our jail and look, the savings from us hauling them to the hospital or to the doctor's office or to the dentist would be way more than what we realize. I don't have a specific number that I can tell you, but I can tell you the folks at Seward especially made it known that it was way more cost effective to have them come to us than there. Not to mention the safety factor of hauling them back and forth. As you said, their main idea is to get out.
That's very true. And again, one other thing about mental health. We would have enough beds that we wouldn't have to be mixing, for example, murderers or drug inmates with mental health inmates. And if you have somebody on staff there who is more able to find an avenue or an approach for these mental health people that end up in jail to get them the help or to the proper facilities that they need, that cuts back on cost savings too. There's a lot of mental health prisoners in jail today. And you know what, one other thing, and I had one farmer say, you know what, or maybe it was one of our supervisors, we don't need to be building this Cadillac or Lamborghini of a facility for inmates. Well, what we're building is nothing fancy by any means at all. And I'm of that same thought process that inmates don't need anything fancy. But again, compare just a regular facility, a new facility to ours. Think about this. Every inmate is somebody's son or daughter, or even mother, father, brother, uncle, or a friend. And everybody deserves, not everybody in there is in there for something serious, but everybody deserves to be treated humanely. And we can do that much more effectively in a newer facility than what we can with what we have today.
Scott, I have a couple questions. One is, would juveniles be held there?
Pardon me?
Would juveniles be held there?
You know what, Phyllis? We pay even more for juveniles. We house them in Madison County, and we spend $135 a day per juvenile. And if they have to go on a secure site, $165 a day. So I would have loved to have built a bigger facility, but then you're talking at something that's going to end up costing $50 million or $60 million. And I just did not think that the voters would approve something like that. So I had to keep this down to where I could actually hope that it would pass.
Gotcha. And what about tornado hardening? Is there what about hardening for tornadoes? Is there the storm shelter there or what? What?
We would shelter in place.
Okay.
Not
So the
like
buildings.
now, if we have a fire, if they have to go out, oh God, that just scares me to even think about something like that.
Phyllis,
Yeah.
Will be
we cannot hold juveniles on the same grounds that we hold adult. They have to be in separate facilities. It's the law, and that's why we pay so much, because there's not many places around that do it.
And that's not transport cost to transport juveniles. Let's see how this facility goes, and maybe in the future we can help eliminate those costs too.
This is Judy Sending. It sounds like there's just too much pushback from our elected officials. Is there any way that we who have heard this and understand this can help change their minds?
You bet. And we don't have any money for campaigning. You know, we can't use tax dollars to campaign. We did not do any fundraising. What we decided to do, we always wanted to take this to the public. We wanted the public to decide if this is something that they wanted us to do. So like I said, I've been on TV, radio. Tony Herman has helped us out immensely. Visiting with you guys, I think this is about the 6th or 7th different club that I visited. So it's all word of mouth. Elaine had Lyle Fleehardy and I visit with a church group one day too, in front of about 45 or 50 people. So we're all word of mouth. I don't go out and preach anything, but if I'm, and it's tough, you know, because we're not supposed to get out and do a whole lot of socializing, but if I'm around people and they know I'm heading this up and they ask, then I talk to them about it and explain it to them. So, you know, if you're having dinner with somebody or talking to a friend on the phone or whatever, it's just word of mouth is how the word is going to get out there.
Okay, thanks. This presentation will be on the public access channel, so maybe.
You know, we've got 7 people on the board. 6 see the need and are going to solve our problem. The thing is some people say that we cannot afford that $38 million bond issue. If you really, really look at all those numbers, you have to tell yourself, we can't afford not to pass, because it's going to cost, well, maybe not us so much as it will our children and grandchildren. And we want a facility where we know we're going to have to expand in 20 or 30 years. We want to do it there on a new building, not an old broken down courthouse that was built 3 years before I graduated. That building cost us $1.54 million.
They had schools.
Look at what inflation's done.
For example, Red Willow County, they put it up for a vote to the public and it kept getting turned down. Their board of supervisors finally did that nickel tax, but they ended up paying for that facility 3 times, as if they would have done it the very, very first time. And there's a number of counties that are looking at this today just because everybody realizes the cost savings. And it's my job as a supervisor too, because I'm also a taxpayer. And I'm on the budget committee also. And I've worked hard, worked very hard for every year that I've been here to try to help keep the counties asking down as much as we can. We've done a very, very good job at it. This is another way to help keep it down. So, well, you guys, thank you very much for listening.
Scott, could I jump in one more? This is Chris Junker. I do have a question for you. I'm just wondering, have you, we hear a lot about buildings being dilapidated, and a lot of times there's just no budget to keep them up as we should. What do you have as a plan to, like, a maintenance budget for this building?
Well, we haven't come up with dollars and cents on that, but we have figured it out that it's probably not going to cost any more than what we're paying today. When you have a brand new facility, you don't have to have an electrician or a plumber up there every day. You know what they cost per hour to get up there, and they're up there all the time. So when you have something brand new, you don't have all these issues. We can shut down that jail that we have today in the courthouse and use that for storage. That's going to help alleviate a huge, huge problem there. But we could shut down the utilities up there, or at least keep them to a very, very minimum. We spend in the wintertime, we can spend $10,000 a month in that courthouse just on a utility bill. And that's just the courthouse. Jail's eating an awful lot of that up there. And mostly it's heat. I mean, once again, that's a very antiquated building. You build these new facilities, they're insulated so well, built so well, those things get cut drastically. So even though it's going to be a much bigger building, you probably even have less maintenance costs than you will on what we have up here today.
Plus, there should be a guarantee on the construction that it's maintenance free for 2 years, because it would be considered a defect and the contractor or the engineers would have to come out and pick that up.
And with this COVID today, there's a lot of big contractors who do work like this that don't have work. I had one call me yesterday. He says, I'm coming to Hastings on the 19th. Will you meet with me? You know, that's what they do. A lot of them don't have work. So not only are interest rates low, but you can probably get a contractor at a lesser cost than if they were busy all the time. So again, there's millions of reasons why to do it now. You know, I had a few of the farmers say, this just isn't the right time. There'll never be a right time in some people's mind. But when it comes down to dollars, when it comes down to safety, a million other issues, it does show that it is the right time to do it, in my belief anyhow.
Okay, one thing that I don't think we've mentioned too much is that we could actually help pay off the jail by housing other prisoners.
I tried to touch on that with.
So keep in mind that if we can house, you know, I have it figured, and I'm not a math whiz, but I have it figured that we would need to house 5.2 prisoners a day to pay our actual bond payment per year. If we could house 5.2 prisoners per day, we could pay off our payment for that year. Now, hopefully we could do that. And then, so we do have a means of paying this back. Also, I'd like to mention that if you go to adamscounty.org, go down just a bit, there is a line for the new Justice Center. Click on that. There's 3 things. One is a video explaining who has housed in a county jail. The second one is the presentation we as the group got on our first jail committee meeting. And the third one goes through, and it's an extensive 76-page study that Pro Haskell Associates did to explain what needs to be done to the jail to improve it and to meet jail standards, which we've learned, as Dale said, was going to be the 81 million. So I encourage all of you to go to adamscounty.org, click on the new Justice Center, and look at all or one of the 3 things that are there. Anything else? All right, thank you very much for coming. Again, this is going to be on the Facebook page of League of Women Voters, and this will also be broadcast on the Hastings Public Access channel if you have Spectrum or Allo. Anything else? Okay, Chris, if you would want to stop recording, and then we can see if there's any announcements.